Okay, so now we're gonna create a meal tracker, and we're gonna do it in a very simple way without a interface. But this is what the program will look like, and it's a very top-down program with no functions, but it's only there to illustrate what we can do with lists, some input from the user, and also how we can save things into a file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an entirely new file and walk you through the different stages of this. So I'm going to call this meal tracker 2, and the first thing we want to do is think about the features we're going to have in our program. And we're thinking right now that this is a basic program where we could we let the user enter some meals through the input function, and the way we do that is to let them like this, what did you eat today? And what this is gonna do is query the user or prompt the user to enter something, and we'll just save that. So if we run this, what did you eat today? Well, I had pancakes, for example. We're going to print out pancakes. And the thing is, we want to, first of all, when we've received input from the user, we also want to save those into a file, because every time we restart the program, there is nothing being saved. So if I wrote pancakes here, then it's going to be difficult for me to say that, okay, what are the other meals that I had for the past week, for example. So these are the features. We want to save the meal, and we also want to maybe save the breakfast if it's a lunch or a dinner, and not the portion size or the date and time, but we want to print all the meals that we've entered. We don't want to do any filtering or any diet tracking stuff. So this is what we're going to end up with. And this is also one of the important aspects when programming, is that if we don't know beforehand what we want to build, then we should start to outline them into just some basic bullet points, just to keep us in a direction. Now what we can do is that we can use the with open and say that with open meals enter text is gonna open a file called whatever I write here in a mode called append, and it's gonna bind and let us access that file through this variable file. So I can say I want to write the meal, which is just entered here, and I want also write a new line /n. Now let's see what's going to happen when we run this again. We're going to hopefully end up with a new text file in our projects. So let's say I had pancakes. Great. We might have seen this, meals enter.txt, and we got pancakes and a new line. And the reason we want a new line is because the next entered meal should end up on the line below. So let's say we run this again. Say we had like meatballs, and update the file, and we have pancakes and meatballs. So what we've done here is that we've opened the file, and each time we run it, it's not going to create a new file because of this mode. So it's just going to keep on adding whatever we enter here. And after we write, we could also say, like, there are two ways to do this, but when this with block ends, the file is closed, but we can reopen it in different mode, which is R, just R mode, which is read. And we can reuse file variable because this is a different block from this, so it's not going to be a collision. Even if it was, it's just the same file. But anyway, this binding will happen here. And instead of just writing, we could say that read lines. Okay. And I also think that we could, for example, just say read all the lines and print them just to see how it looks like. And writes. We see that each entry here has a new /n, which is the new line. When we want to print this, we're gonna have to take care of this. But basically, we're gonna have to do this. For each of these lines here, we want to print them on a separate row. So I'm gonna iterate over lines, and then I want to print the meal and specify the end should be just something empty, because print itself will add a new line. Before we do that, let's see, we have actually 3 meals entered. Perfect. Let's run this again, say that we had pasta, and those are the meals that we've saved, and this is the one we've entered. We could say, like, a nice little title here, say that all the meals you've had, and the next time we run, we're gonna have this little title bar here. So with very little code, we managed to save things to a file, open it, and read all the files, so the content in it. And the next thing we could do is to let, for example, the user enter a couple of meals before quitting. And we could say, if you look at the other file, which was more complete, we have this while loop, which checks if a valid meal type is entered. So if it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner. But we could also reuse the same type of while loop if you want to query or prompt the user an infinite number of times. So basically, we want to say this, like while true, and then I want to check that, for example, if meal is like Q, we want to break. And Q is just something I just picked here for the designer, that Q would say like represent stop. Let's see what happens, like pizza, great. one loop. Second one is that I had some meat, so that's the second loop. It's just still in here. Hopefully it has already entered things to the file, and now if I press Q, it will stop the prompt from the user and instead say that all the meats I've had are printed. And this also reflects what the file looked like. Means enter here, like so. And if you saw in the other file here, where we actually also had the meal type being prompted to the user, we could actually enter that as well in the same loop. But before we do that, we need to explain that we have stored all the valid meal types in a structure, in a list in this case. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the idea here is to let the user first of all enter a meal, and then if it was a breakfast, lunch, or dinner. And then we could save that into the file as well. So let's copy this, and if we know we've not entered Q, we want to continue and check the user, the valid meal types the user has entered. This one is unknown here, so let's copy it from this other file, like so. So if we know the user has not entered Q, we know it's a meal, and then as long it's not a valid meal type, we just want to keep on querying, prompting the user that please enter valid meal type. And then we're gonna have to modify this row, because apart from the meal, we also want to know the meal type. Now let's try this. So let's say we had noodles. When I had that for lunch, and now we're in the second loop, but I don't want to do that. I'm just going to print Q, and it's quit, or it quit the loop and continue to printing inside all the meals. And we see here that the only entry which has the meal type is the latest one. And we could also modify this, for example, to like delete all the entries and like restart again. But this is a basic demonstrations of how we can use the while loop and the lists. So with a very short program, barely 30 lines, we can keep track of meals. And I hope you enjoyed this video, and give this a thumbs up or leave a comment, and we'll build upon this program in the next video.